Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast with your host, Hannah Hermanson, bringing you real-life stories of people who realized their dreams to educate and inspire you to create your legacy of abundance now.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, I am hanging out with a rock star. We are with Jeremy Ryan Slate. He is the founder of the Create Your Own Life podcast to help create a life on your own terms. He actually studied literature at Oxford University and is a former champion powerlifter turned into new media entrepreneur. He specializes in using podcasting and new media to create celebrity and was ranked number 1 in iTunes New and Noteworthy and number 26 in the iTunes Business category. Jeremy was named one of the top 26 podcasts for entrepreneurs to listen to in 2017 by CIO Magazine and Millennial Influencer, to follow in 2018 by BuzzFeed. The Create Your Own Life podcast has been downloaded almost 250,000 times. He's also a featured writer for Influencive and Business.com. After his success in podcasting, Jeremy Slate and his wife, Brielle Slate, founded Command Your Brand to help entrepreneurs get their message out by appearing as guests on podcasts. So how does it feel to be a guest on a podcast today, Jeremy?
It feels rather comfortable since I do this a lot because I love helping people, learn how to tell their story and make an impact. So thanks for having me, Hannah.
Yes, I'm excited to hear more about your story. And I like to ask folks who come onto the show, since we do so much work virtually, where in the world are you right now?
Well, it's funny because you and I were talking a little bit about this in the beginning, and I'm in New Jersey, but then last week I had a random trip to Florida for a few days, and here I am back in New Jersey. And because I can work from anywhere, I know my wife and I are planning next year, we're planning on actually living in London for 6 months next year. And because of the type of business, we have, that's what we can do,
Yeah, create your own life. You are a fine example of having the flexibility and freedom to, speak to us from New Jersey or London or Florida. Thanks for being here again.
Absolutely.
So a piece of your story I actually didn't know about is that you are a former champion powerlifter. And
yeah.
So I'm curious, was that your childhood dream, or how did that career come about?
I'll actually give you the real story behind that. So I was a wrestler in school, and we were big into fitness and everything like that. But I was also the kid that was picked on in grammar school, high school. So getting strong and everything else meant they weren't going to pick on me anymore, though I'm not really a tough guy. I'm more like a teddy bear. So it was, for me, it was always my outlet, and it was that thing that kind of gave me confidence. And I did a lot of fun stuff in that time. I bench pressed 455, deadlifted 605, squatted 705 or 635, squatted 705, and I also pulled an 80,000-pound army tank. I don't do a lot of those numbers anymore just because I've kind of realized, hey, there's more to life than carrying a cooler with you everywhere. But it's a lot of fun and still part of my routine every morning.
Yeah, so interesting. I hear a lot of numbers. The numbers you just shared don't mean a whole lot to me, yet I can totally relate to that phase of life or that mindset where we're always seeking that next level, whether it's an income point or a weight. And so are you still pretty numbers driven, or how do you look at goals or achievements these days?
I am absolutely and always have been numbers driven. I think that comes just out of being an athlete. You know what I mean? You want to get that faster 40 time, or you want to get that, that faster pitch or whatever it may be. So I'm always competing for numbers, whether it's, trying to grow my email list by X number this week or reaching a certain revenue number, whatever it may be. So I'm very, very numbers motivated. But if you look at it this way, it's super logical to be numbers motivated, because sometimes you can worry about too much about how things feel, and feelings don't always denote the actual situation, whereas statistics can show us what the situation's like. So for me, I really do think that's a true kind of gauge of where things are at, and that's why I'm very numbers driven, which is kind of funny because I was horrible in math at school, but for some reason now I'm very numbers driven.
Interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating to me how we go through these phases in our career or in our lives, and we have these similar mindsets or types of achievements that we strive for. And for you, it's numbers. For me, it's been time off and freedom.
Well, it's that does equate to time off and freedom and things like that. If you kind of marry a goal to something, like it's great to hit a number. If that number doesn't mean anything, like let's go have dinner or something like that, you always want to have something accompanied with it, because if it's just a number, it's pointless as well.
Got it. Yeah. So have you always been into the entrepreneurial space, or have you had other jobs before getting into new media?
Well, it's funny because I had a newspaper route at 12, so I've always done that. And I had 250 newspapers every day, which was crazy seeing this kid with these two giant.
Still remember the number?
Oh, I still remember the number. I had 250 subscribers at my highest level, which meant I had these two giant shoulder bags on me, and if I hit any sort of bump, I was going to fall over. So that was kind of where it started, but I didn't really, I guess, realize that entrepreneurship was a thing. I had this friend that I used to work out with in my late teens, and he always said, oh, you want to be an entrepreneur. I was like, oh, I guess that means you want to be lazy. Because I came from a very, very blue collar family where you go out, you get a job, you do whatever it may be. So for me, it was teaching first. Then I went through a bunch of, I guess, transitional jobs, you could say. Selling life insurance, which is you're sort of an entrepreneur, but not really, because you still work for somebody. I worked at somebody's digital marketing firm as their, I guess, head of marketing or whatnot. And it was from there that I jumped into the whole podcasting and new media space. And it kind of took me a while to get that confidence to be able to do it, because I don't think a lot of times that we're born entrepreneurs. I think it's kind of a skill that's learned and something you can just get better at. So there was a lot of jobs there that I wasn't all that great at, being a teacher for 2 years as well in there before I came into this whole new media space.
Yeah. Take us back to that, being a teacher. We're both former educators, and I have a very similar background where I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. I don't know if they were lazy, but I thought they were very, money driven and swanky, if you will. So talk to us a little bit about your decision to become a teacher and what you think motivated that initial career choice.
I'll be 100% honest with you, Hannah. It's because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and my mom always wanted to be a teacher and didn't get a chance to go to college. So I'm like, all right, I'll do that. That sounds like a great idea. And I also didn't do it in, I guess, the correct way. You know what I mean? A lot of times you get your teaching degree, which means you can actually go teach at a public school or whatever and make a decent amount of money. I actually went and, studied abroad and got my master's in ancient history and, took 12 years of Latin, go figure. And at that point in time, it was all right, well, what else do you do from here? Well, I can teach in private school because you don't really need any sort of specialized degree in order to do that. But I feel like that also made the decision quite rough on me as well, because I didn't really have that classroom experience. They're all right, so here's 40 kids and have fun. I wasn't as laid back and kind in my early 20s as I am now. I was kind of a jerk. So it was really kind of a rough situation for everyone. Being somebody that was a smart guy, but really unable to translate that for others. And I feel like I've gotten better at teaching the more I've had to be an entrepreneur, because I've had to learn how to help people at other levels. Yeah,
I think that's so true about my now understanding of what entrepreneurs do. And we are so often teachers.
It's funny too, because I find that in every line of work that I've worked in, being an entrepreneur or being digital marketer or whatever it may be, I always fall back into teaching. And I think it's because you kind of realize that you have to translate this for others. But in the beginning, it wasn't something I was very good at. It was definitely a learned skill.
Yeah, and I loved in your bio talking about the success that you had when you did step into this new media business, and you had so much success with your own podcast that then you quickly turned that into Command Your Brand, and now you and your partner are helping others emulate that success and achieve their goals.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I got in that space when I started it, where I had tried all these things, like I told you, it didn't quite work out. So I was like, all right, what else can I do? So that's where the whole idea for starting a podcast, came from. And what I did then is I then located the people that I thought were the big opinion leaders that I wanted to learn from. So I was like, all right, if I'm gonna burn out, I'm gonna go down in flames. So that was kind of the best way to do it. And because of trying to aim big, I actually saw that level of success. And it's something that I actually didn't see in a lot of other people starting podcasts or looking to get on podcasts or things like that. And that was why I wanted to show that to other people, because even not just the know-how is important, but even that viewpoint is super, super important, and kind of putting the idea there that you got to aim big to fail big. You know what I mean? If you aim small, you're going to fail small, and you're not really going to have much to show for it. So honestly, that was just that viewpoint was one of the biggest things I learned. And it really has to underlie everything you do. And that was the biggest thing in starting the media company, was really helping people to get that viewpoint of what you're supposed to aim for, then really helping them put all those things they need into place.
Aim big, and the how or the what service or the what thing you need to share or create will show up and present itself. I hear that so many times on the show, that people just kind of have to open themselves up to not knowing exactly what it's going to look like, but I'm going to aim big and I'll find out the way that I need to share this or monetize this, if you will.
No, I think that's 100% true. But I will say there's a little caveat to that of you do have to figure out the actionable steps you can do behind it. And I think it's really, really important to have that in place, because without structure, you can also get pretty depressed when you fail big. So that's important to have something to fall back on as well.
So what advice would you have, or what was your experience in charting those first initial steps for your success?
Well, I'll tell you what, because I've tried this a couple different ways. The first way was, all right, I'm going to quit my job and just go for it. That was a really, really bad idea, really stressful idea with a lot of really sad nights. The way I found really worked was to have something else while I was building what I wanted. So for me, it was then working at that digital marketing firm for about 2 years while I figured out everything I'm doing now, what I've been doing for the last, 3+ years, because I really had structure there to pay the bills while I was creating what I wanted to create. Because I think a lot of times when the decisions we have to make are super dependent on how much, gross revenue is coming in right now, you make some really, really bad short-sighted decisions. So when I jumped right from that teaching job to, all right, let's build my network marketing business, and this thing has to support me right now, that wasn't the smartest decision, especially since I really didn't know a whole lot of what I was doing in that space. So really what that allows you to do by having something that's, I guess, a firm job is it allows you to get the skills that you need and also to create something without worrying about failing as much, which means you can actually take more risks and think bigger and long term. I know Gary Vee says that entrepreneurs not only have to have 6-month vision, but they have to have 6-day vision at the same time. So I think when you're worried so much about the how do I pay my bills tomorrow, it's a little bit scary. So having something there is super helpful.
Yeah, that diverse perspective, like you said, 6 days, 6 years, 6 decades out, and the power of multiple streams of income, I think is something that's so important. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I think that's huge. So
Right.
you hesitated there, so I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if you had something to say, because this is exactly what I'm all about. It's like, okay, great. Figure out the how, like a big service you can create, so that then you can go out and write that book and have more creativity to host a workshop or do the retreat, these many ways of like manifesting your vision, your mission, and also supporting yourself makes for hopefully less of those sad nights, as you mentioned, right after quitting everything at once. Been there.
Well, it's a stressful situation, right, Hannah? Because not only do you have to deal with, having to pay your bills, but you also you have to worry about how other people feel about you. Like a lot of the feedback you're getting that you don't really want. So it can be a little tough to be dealing with all those things coming at you from different angles at the same time. And a lot of people crumble under that.
Yeah, it just, kind of exemplify or amplifies the vulnerability if you're worrying about how to pay bills and everyone thinks of you and will this business model work? So something I want to dive into, kind of shifting gears with you, because I'm assuming people listening to this podcast like podcasts, and you are a guru or an expert in this field. So talk to us a little bit about, the importance of podcasting, and maybe if someone's listening to this and interested in being interviewed or starting their own podcast, why would you encourage them to explore that idea?
Well, here's the one thing I will say, just as a side note to make this make more sense, is there's a lot of podcasts out there and video is really powerful now, but 80% of all podcasts listened to are actually audio only. And that's really important for the reason of radio is becoming something that's not really doing so hot. And we're seeing podcasts be more like the Netflix of radio. So what we're actually seeing is something that's more available to people So you're getting their time when they can't watch a video or they're going to crash into something. And really what you're doing is you're getting more mind share, which wouldn't really be available. And you're also getting a highly engaged user because you're getting a user that actually has to go out and find you, look for you, and press play. Whereas they're just like, all right, I'll put on this radio station and maybe listen every now and then. So that's kind of the thing to think of first and foremost, is just how cool this medium is because of how available it is. And then also there's a lot to be done in this space. I just read an article from TechCrunch this morning that in 2017, I think it was like $350 million was actually earned off of podcast advertising. So it's a very fast-growing space where the listener's super engaged. So that's what I'll say first of all. Now, I'll say if you're going to start a podcast, the thing to really understand is how you're going to differentiate from people and how you want to help people. Because the biggest issue you see way too many people that are trying to take the entrepreneur on fire model and do it for themselves. John has done a great job with that, but there's too many people trying to like recreate that show. And because of that, you're actually promoting the podcast space and not yourself as an individual podcaster. So that's something to really think about. And I think it's something people can get tired of as well, because you even look at what John's done now since April, where he's now only doing 2 episodes a week instead of 7. People get tired of it eventually. So really figure out how you're going to help people, how you're going to be different, and then worry about putting your content together. So really you have to have that underlying done before you're really going to have content together. And the other thing I would say is that interviews are a really, really, really great way to do that. And that's why for me, I started out with an interview podcast because I was an academic writer. So I was really bad at blogging, which now I do a lot of, but when I started, I was really bad at it. So this helped me to create content by interviewing people that knew a lot in their subject. And then also there's this other idea of something called positioning, right? In branding, there's this term called positioning that basically means you're taken and you're either compared for or against something people already know, right? So an easy way to take a look at that is, let's say Crest toothpaste, and you're going to compare your brand to Crest toothpaste and say, we are better than Crest, we are worse than Crest, or whatever it may be. You're taking something people already know. So in the interview way, what you're doing is you're taking entrepreneurs or business owners or thought leaders that people already know and trust, and you're actually going to be using them to grow your own personal credibility and branding, because every time you interview somebody that has a little bit more standing, it helps you to grow your branding. And that's a lot of what I've done. So that's what I would really say about having an interview podcast. I guess before I talk about the guesting side, is there anything else that you wanted me to cover in that part?
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say, boom, shake the room, JRS. I totally agree. And I love how much you're speaking about the idea of first, how are you going to help people? And I think having a really clear mission when you start anything, especially a podcast or a project or a service, like who is this helping, and focusing all of your content and your conversations around the listeners. And then also something I just wanted to add to all of the benefits of, growing a podcast or starting any interview series, whether you're just starting out as an entrepreneur or you're trying to learn about it, it's this like amazing built-in network. And so you and I, Jeremy, we started on some interviews on Facebook, I think, and now here we are with this like really supportive friendship that we, jump on each other's shows and share our audiences. And so I just think there's so much winning that can happen, whether you start your own podcast or just start conversations.
Absolutely. And it's just the networking aspect is incredible. Like some of the best friends I've ever had, I've made from podcasting. And that's something to really think about as well, because you kind of, like you said, you create this group, you can actually support each other by having each other in a show, by featuring a product somebody's launching, something like that. So I just think absolutely networking is kind of, my friend Jay Wong likes to say that podcasting is the greatest life hack because of the networking it lets you do. And I think it's huge. It absolutely is.
Yeah. And then we're having this conversation, we're learning from each other, and now we're going to get into the earbuds of many more people who get to benefit from this interaction and take us with them into their world. And I am currently envisioning a huge ripple effect of go-getters thinking about who they can talk to and how they can pursue their dreams. So quickly, just tell us, let's say we're not quite ready to start a podcast, or we just want to maybe be featured, kind of start working on that positioning for ourselves. What advice do you have for new guests?
Well, I guess there's a couple things here, and I'll go through this quick because I say a couple things, actually a lot of things. One thing is having your website looking professional, with having a professional bio and things like that on it, because you want to be thinking not just in the eyes of podcasting, but also in media, like how are you going to look credible? So that's kind of first and foremost of having your website looking credible. The other thing is I like to say before reaching out to podcasts, even figure out how you can do something in your local area that's impactful, and start taking a look at like local newspapers that maybe like mail out once a week or things like that. Because a lot of those you can actually get to print press releases that'll run as digital copies, and now you can start building a media page on your website. So like if you take a look at my site, a good example of that is jeremyryanslate.com/media. You'll see like how I actually organize a lot of this stuff, and it kind of makes you look more credible in your space. So then what you want to actually do is the biggest search tool I use is iTunes. Believe it or not, there's nothing better out there yet. I really hope somebody does come up with something that's got a little bit of a better ranking system, but right now that's what we have. So what I tell people to do is once you know your purpose, who you want to help, and where you want to go with it, start looking for shows that have less than 20 episodes and less than 50 reviews, because those are going to be newer shows that are going to be much easier to get on. Even if you have more credibility outside of podcasting, you need to start somewhere in podcasting. So that's kind of the place to do it. And what you really want to do then is I tell people avoid the contact form. See how you can actually talk to the person that either hosts that show or produces that show. Shoot them an email and actually explain to them how you can help and make it very, individualized to them. And then once you actually have those initial smaller appearances done, you can start using those as kind of, social proof or credibility to get bigger shows. But that's really how it starts. It's not super, super complicated, and start small to get big is what you always have to keep in mind.
Yeah, no matter what media you're trying to be featured in or play a part in, start small. And I think that those steps that you just shared are really fundamental for folks who are starting out and like, okay, how do I diversify my media coverage or even my marketing? Because having podcast features or newspaper features or blog features are a really great foundation for, getting to the higher level publications or audiences. So thank you. That was a great insight. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So we're getting to that phase of the show I like to call pop quiz. You, as a former educator, should do just fine thinking on your feet. But I will be grading you. No.
Oh, gosh.
No, I'm teasing.
Please no Scantrons. Please no Scantrons.
Everyone take out your blue books and your number 2 pencil.
Oh, God.
No. We left that scene for a reason. But three more questions. And the first one is, what are action steps, things that listeners can do today to get them closer to their dream life or their goals?
I guess it's just very simple because a lot of people don't have it in place. Is I would say figure out who you want to help, figure out how you want to help them, and then take a look at what type of media they consume and start creating that type of content. It's so basic, but it's actually, believe it or not, a lot of people don't do it. And figure out who their opinion leaders are and figure out how you can create content with those opinion leaders. It's really basic, but that's the best place to start.
Who do you want to help? And then become super interested in those people, other folks, because I firmly believe that the more people you help get what they want, you will get what you want. So great. Yeah. A+.
Awesome.
Question number 2 is, what is a tangible resource, whether it's a book or a podcast or a seminar that perhaps changed your life or you would just recommend to other folks to get their hands on? Yeah. 2
books I'm always recommending, one being the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, because like I was telling you, the viewpoint of understanding like what you have to do and how you have to do it is really important. And then another thing to keep you a little bit grounded is a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport.
Ooh, yeah.
Have you read that book?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, well, I like what Cal says because I just find that going off and saying, oh, I'm not passionate about it can actually keep you in action. So find out what you're good at, get really good at it, and you'll actually find you get passionate about it. Because I just feel like sometimes it can take you off in the wrong direction. So that's kind of my viewpoint of what Cal has to say.
Get good and you'll love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Another A+. Third question, hopefully the easiest one. Where can people learn more about your work and stay connected?
Absolutely. So they can actually check me out either at commandyourbrand.media or they can check me out at jeremyryanslate.com.
Command your brand, my friends. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for dropping so much wisdom and sharing pieces of your story I hadn't heard before. We appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll be back next week with another inspiring guest.
You've been learning how to make your dream life your real life with Hannah Hermanson. To get the resources mentioned on today's show and to listen to past episodes, visit www.dreamlifeisreallife.com.